Apple is killing the IDFA. Is this a privacy power move or is it a cash grab? Welcome to Tech First with John Koetsier. In the next version of Apple's mobile operating system, iOS 14, Apple's making a device identifier, the IDFA, opt in. Most experts think the way they're doing it will cause most people who see it to opt out. And that's probably a good thing for privacy. But it has some serious marketing implications, and maybe it also means some extra revenue for Apple. To learn more, I'm going to bring in Abhay, Singhal, and Sergio Serra. They're with InMobi, an ad network. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Good to have you guys. Hey, how does Apple benefit by making the IDFA opt-in?
Very good question there, John. Look, InMobi is all about user privacy. So we absolutely welcome this move that Apple has made to make the user's data more secure and just the opt-in part. But the way Apple has approached this particular scenario is something that gives us a bit of shivers on how someone can fundamentally shift the entire backbone of the industry so quickly and give probably just a little over 3 months for the industry to adapt to it.
Yes.
So the approach is the issue here, as against to just the thing that they are doing, and I believe there was a better way of doing that for sure. But certainly, I think this is going to take us back to what I call as the stone ages of advertising. People are really talking about contextual is better than precise, and who needs frequency capping, and why is retargeting good? I mean, all of those things that we have learned to understand as the backbone that makes digital advertising digital are sort of all going out of the window.
Mm-hmm. So Sergio, talk a little bit. How does Apple benefit by making the IDFA opt-in? Is there a financial incentive for them?
Right. So I think I would take a step back and I will talk about how the publishers can monetize today, right? So the primary way that the publishers use to monetize their properties is advertising, as we all know. And there are multiple studies out there that confirm that roughly this is the main revenue source for 65 to 70% of the enough publishers over there. But if you forget advertising for a while, then the other options they are given is one, the paid apps, where you want to have an app, you go there and you pay, and then you will use the app forever. And the other option is in-app purchase, or also known as IAP, YAP. And you can think about it like, I don't know, you are playing a game and you want to buy some special weapon, you want to skip a level. So usually game developers give you this flexibility. By paying a specific amount, you can have access to that. And then lastly, there is another model, which is the subscription model. So you can think about, I don't know, Tinder, Spotify, Amazon, all the other apps that in order to benefit from their content, you have to pay a monthly, yearly subscription, depending on the model. Then there is also some minor source, like, freemium. I consider this to be a subset of subscription, right? And then maybe data selling. But going back to the incentive for Apple, so Apple today has a very small stake when it comes to advertising. And if we focus on programmatic advertising, we are really talking about an industry of 100 billion and for 2020. And today, Apple, the only way that they try to take a slice of this, a share, is via Apple search ads. But our speculation, at least my speculation, would be that if, interestingly, you look at their income statements, right? What you can say is what you can see is that the first line is obviously the iPhone one, and the second line in terms of revenue contribution is the services line.
Yes.
Now this is very strategic line for them, because of course, they have iPhone as a main product, but then you cannot expand forever, right? At some point, you will reach a plateau. So services is what they will give them the multiplier, and they have been investing a lot into this. Now, looking at the components of the services line, the primary one is the App Store. So App Store is, basically speaking, really made of in-app purchase and subscriptions. paid apps is also there, but in their revenue is a very small percentage. As a matter of fact, if you look at the top grossing Apple Store apps, I think among the top 200, only one is a paid app.
Yes, Minecraft.
Correct, absolutely. So since they are kind of 15 years late to the ad ecosystem, the only way and the smart way they would have, and this is again me speculating, is rather than try to get heavily into advertising, to shift the revenue, the publisher revenue models and the business models towards in-app purchase and subscriptions. Now, the upside for them is that for all the transactions, the users has to go through the Apple payment system. So in this case, Apple gets a 30% fee for all in-app purchases, and for subscription, it becomes a percentage after the first year. But it is a very big margin for a company.
So basically, what you're saying is Apple wants to de-emphasize advertising as a means of monetizing apps. And that has grown massively. I mean, it was almost nowhere probably 3-4 years ago, and grown to late last year was probably 50% or over 50% of the revenue that developers on average were getting in terms of monetizing their apps. So Apple is what you're saying is they're de-emphasizing, they want to de-emphasize advertising as a mode of monetizing your app and reroute that monetization avenue towards in-app purchases and purchasing apps and subscriptions, correct?
Correct. And then I'm also happy to hear what Abhay has to say there. But I think there are speculation also in the market saying, Apple is trying to enforce this because they want to get into the advertising game again and try to get higher market share. But I would actually disagree, because for them, it's a much more profitable business to look at the service line, right?
Yeah.
They are able to move the publisher towards that, because let's face it, when you move away the IDFA, which they are not officially deprecating, but making it difficult to access for everybody in the chain, then the only viable option for the publisher becomes in-app purchase or subscriptions. And then I think these are much better strategy for them.
Abhay, let's turn to you for a second and talk about Apple's ad business. They bought iAd. It's got to be 6-7 years ago or something like that right now. It's called Apple Advertising. At least that's what the option is in iOS 14 in settings. And it's been called Apple Search Ads. But we've seen that Apple Search Ads has been actually placing some ads outside the App Store recently. Talk about what you see there and how you see that growing. Do you see Apple growing that or not caring about that revenue too much?
I don't know whether they care about that revenue or not, because Apple is bigger than many countries put together. So I'm sure at their scale, even $1 billion business or a few $1 billion business is a pretty small chump change. But interestingly, what is important is that the Apple search is out there from an advertising perspective, but it is something that I haven't seen big advertisers latch on to at scale at any point in time. Here's Facebook, Google, InMobi, AppLovin, IronSource. There are many, many different players that are literally the big players in that ecosystem. Unity's numbers have just come out, and they are a decent sized player in this game. So I don't know what's their strategy, but it is certainly it feels like an important play where they are making their own Apple advertising on by default. They are insisting on a user, if they're going to use any other sign-on, then they also need to use the Apple ID as a sign-on capability. Payment, if they're using, they need to use the Apple Pay by default. So it all feels like very closed ecosystem that gets created. And a byproduct of such a closed ecosystem is a very effective advertising medium. Is Apple going to really do that? How far they're going to go in the process of doing that, only time will tell. Tim Cook had come out in 2019 and he said that, look, you are not our product. We don't sell your data. But then, we've seen these viewpoints change over the period of time for large corporations.
Yes, it's interesting. I recently upgraded to the iOS 14 beta, and so I just took a look recently at what it takes to look at Apple advertising. So this is a screen share. I literally made this this morning. You scroll down to there's privacy, right? And interestingly, it doesn't. It's not one of the main ones. Not at the top. It's at the bottom. Doesn't even have an icon. I'm going to move back to that so you can see that for sure. No icon. There's Apple advertising at the bottom. It's default on, and if you click on it, you see that it will share your data across a variety of different places, right? Any thoughts on that? I mean, it's default on for sharing data across App Store searches, Apple News, so it kind of knows what news you're interested in. Maybe also if you're a liberal, conservative, maybe if you're into technology or you're not, those sorts of things. Also stocks. So if you keep your stocks in the Apple stock apps, and it sees that, and then of course some device ID like the type of phone, language, and stuff like that. How's that compare to IDFA access? Sergio, maybe I'll throw that question your way first.
Yeah, so I think I will try to break this down in multiple points here. I think if they really wanted to solve for advertising in general, for the whole ecosystem, they could have employed much better solutions, right? And I'm sure we will talk about this later, but SKAd network has multiple challenges over there. Now, when you look at their default on Apple search ads as true, yeah, I think it's already arguable. But again, I don't see this scaling the level that we are seeing today in the programmatic ecosystem. Just because even that framework doesn't give you the flexibility that the advertisers are looking for. So look at players like Uber, Lyft. So these people are looking at very strict KPIs like cost per first ride, for instance. But the framework they expose today will just give you visibility into install, which is a very basic event. But if you want to scale and really invest as a marketer over there heavily, you have to have multiple steps ahead, which today is not possible. So I don't see them as a really competitive alternative, frankly speaking. And I think in the past, if you look at what Apple did, you were mentioning IAD, so IAD. It was never a big problem for us as a competitor or everybody in the ecosystem, because I think the primary strategy of Apple is being closed innovator, and this comes with its own challenges, right? Because when you are a closed innovator, of course, you kind of lose the sense of the market. So even in case of IAD, they were only supporting iOS, right? So in that case, you are already writing off 50% of your ad revenue over there, especially in markets that are heavily Android driven. So I think, to your question, yes, like this is something that definitely put them in a better spot when it comes to advertising, to take a larger chunk of that share, but of that market. But I still think that this is not their primary strategy.
Abhay, let's talk about SKAd network then, since Sergio brought it up. And you said off the top that, hey, you're not necessarily against Apple making the IDFA opt-in. You were not happy with the fact that they were doing it unilaterally and giving people literally, I guess, 2 months to get ready for it or something like that. But Apple has provided SKAd network as a methodology for people to know, hey, that ad campaign worked to a certain degree. I got an app install from that. That's good. You get one post-install notification or conversion result or something like that within 24 hours or shortly thereafter. What would you have added to SKAd network, or what would you like SKAd network 3.0 to add to make it more useful for the ecosystem?
Absolutely. So look, SKAd network, as good an attempt as it may be, to me, it's a version 0.1 of where the industry is actually at right now from an advertising perspective. To begin with, the number of entries that one can do in SKAd network is extremely limited. And any good advertisers that you pick up is at any point in time running thousands of different campaigns and optimizing things across. And SK network is very limited. Second, it's been a well-known fact that there is deep optimization that happens across the entire industry on multiple different events that a user is doing post-install. Are they active? Are they not active? Have they gone up to level 10? Have they gone up to level 5 of the game? Are they the first ride? Are they not taking the first? Like, there are tons of events that happen that helps the advertiser optimize things. With SK Network, none of those are possible at any level. And above all, I think what it is giving rise to is not a uniform way where the things can work across the board. The entire industry seems to be moving backward towards what they call as fingerprinting, and as much as I hate it, that's possibly the only way. So if you are an advertiser, you would have no definitive way of knowing whether any channel of yours worked effectively over a period of time, and that's a very scary sign for any advertiser at any point in time. So much so that I'm sure you would have seen the Facebook's announcement that came out today morning, where actually they're now taking a complete single sign-on approach to stitch the entire industry. Now that's like another sign of why people are now thinking of solutions that sit one layer above the operating system and trying to bring things together. Now, we'll all see how it evolves, but certainly the way SK Network is today, it is so it is primitive. And I just hope, as someone who's been part of this industry, I just hope that what we are seeing is a version 0.1, and Apple has a plan to come out with 2, 3, 4, 5 new versions in a very quick succession. If they don't, then we're all entering the dark stages.
It is very interesting. I mean, SK Ad Network 1.0 was out last year, and this is 2.0, which adds some significant capability. That's good. I'm sure there will be a 3.0 and 4.0, but I kind of agree with Sergio that advertising is not Apple's top priority in the world, and that they won't rush it out because it doesn't matter to them that deeply. The interesting thing for me is you talked about having a totally different way of having to deal with the ad ecosystem for advertisers. Right. And so, for instance, obviously iOS and Android now completely diverge in how you manage and optimize them. You also saw, I don't know if you saw, Facebook gave guidance to its top advertisers today. And so there's like a 4-page PDF that's circulating right now. And Facebook says you have to create a new iOS 14 ad account in order to manage your iOS 14 advertising. So you'll have to have 2 for iOS plus 1 potentially for Android. It becomes a little more challenging potentially.
Well, absolutely, and that's the issue that we have. Google gave everyone 2 years to adapt to they getting rid of cookies, and I've never seen this before, but Google is extremely collaborative in this approach, along with the IAB and everybody else, to come out with standards and giving time for the industry to adapt. I agree with you there. If Apple was serious about developer making money through this mode, they would have actually played this game much more in collaboration.
Yes.
That's how they have done right now.
Well, Google is an ad network, so that that is a small difference there. And Apple has one, which they don't really care about that much, most likely. So it's an interesting time. Project yourself out a couple months. You are an ad network, so obviously you compete with other ad networks and with Apple advertising, such as it may be in the future. What does the world begin to look like for you? You've got to work in this new reality. Fingerprinting is probably against Apple's regulations as well. You've got to be able to optimize campaigns based on one post-install notification. At least you do know which ad campaigns worked. You get that one post-install conversion information. What does life look like over the next 3 months for InMobi?
Yeah, so over the next 3 months, we're working off multiple different scenarios. In fact, it's the way the life has become. We don't have one roadmap now. We have 4 different roadmaps that I think everybody is executing in parallel. You really don't know which way it is gonna go. If LAT is any example to live by, we know that the monetization capabilities are going to drop substantially, and the users will continue to use the inventory, but it'll become very I don't know what happened inside that inventory. So it'll end up the prices will drop and so on and so forth. If it ends up going in that direction, then there is one answer. Then if publishers ends up evolving to a single sign-on or a sticky banner kind of approach to continuously remind users, then there's a different approach. If you have a scenario where SK Networks makes very quick progression in their own optimization and stuff like that, then there is a third approach. If you have an Apple that comes out and starts to take point of views on some of the other APIs that they have access to, which people are really leveraging to make whatever their probabilistic identity graphs, then you have a fourth approach. So somewhere we are all entering this extremely uncertain period of time for the next 6 to 8 months, and hopefully the first 3 weeks will be telling, because Apple has a generally very quick adoption. So by October mid, we expect that 60-70% of the user would have moved to the new operating system, and that would give enough scale for anyone to play with. But Sergio, to add specifically, if there's anything else that you want to add.
Yeah, so I think you guys addressed already most of it, but there are 2 points I also wanted to highlight, right? So in all of these, everything is good. Yes, it's, let's say, a decent proxy to the current attribution system. I'm referring to SK Ad Network. But we are forgetting the other side of the equation, which are brand campaigns, retargeting campaigns, where they don't care about app install, right? And Apple is taking away IDFA. So to a point that, practically speaking, you cannot even do frequency capping. Yep. So this is also bad for the user, right? Because the user might end up with being thrown the same ad multiple times, being thrown ads that are not relevant to his profile. And even in terms of privacy, at InMobi, we absolutely marry the privacy cause, right? And we have always been there. And as a matter of fact, we work with IAB for TCF 2.0, CCPA approaches. And Google was there, as Abhay was saying. We were very happy to see Google participating as well. But the moment you start taking a private and individual approach at privacy, then you destroy the consistency that the ecosystem was trying to create for the user. So now in Europe, for instance, a user might come to a situation where he's using the app for the first time. It's asked by the TCF 2.0 framework with a prompt, hey, can we track you, list everything. And then again, it has to deal with the Apple prompt. So I think it becomes very confusing. Like privacy shouldn't be screen specific or OS platform specific. It should be very consistent. And with this move, I think we are making a step backwards.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, there's a ton of change going on here. And I'm glad you brought out brand advertising, honestly, because and frequency capping and stuff like that, because I mean, what we have been able to do over the past probably 20 years or so, web and eventually mobile also, is assemble audiences from across the web and across apps that we know are interested in X or Y or something else, right? And you won't be able to do that anymore. Third-party cookies going away, IDFA is going away. Google's ad ID might follow suit at some point. We don't know that yet, but you won't be able to assemble audiences anyway. You'll going back to contextual, as Abhay was talking about a bit earlier. That might make some premium publishers' inventory worth more, because you're falling back on that as the way of targeting, essentially. And that could also seriously hurt hyper casual games, because how the heck do you know who's there, right? It could be a 10-year-old kid. It could be it could be an executive at a technology company. You have no idea, right? So a lot of change coming up. Go ahead, Abhay.
Look, the reason I came to digital advertising is because I exactly didn't like the previous world. I mean, I didn't like, somebody used to say this statement, my 50% of my dollars are getting waste. I just don't know which 50%. Digital solved that problem, and I love the digital industry for that purpose. And under no circumstances I would want to go back to that world where you're continuously relying on doing what you think is working, but not knowing anything about it. So it's a big concern, and I just hope that the Apple in this case is understanding the gravity of the situation and is really balancing this thing across.
Yeah. Well, Abhay, Sergio, I want to thank you for your time. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure to have you. Well, thank you as well for joining us on Tech First. My name is John Koetsier. I appreciate you being along for the ride. You'll be able to get a full transcript of this podcast in about a week at johnkoetsier.com, and the story on Forbes will appear after that. Also, the full video will be available forever on my YouTube channel. Thank you for joining. Maybe share with a friend. Until next time, this is John Koetsier with Tech First.